Hello everyone, Mr. Stevens here with another video, this time on multiplication and division of algebra. So that's basically exactly what we're going to be learning today, learning how to multiply and divide algebraic terms. There's two things we're going to be tackling: breaking up multiplication problems so that we can more easily solve them, and then we're going to be using common factors to break down division problems. Let's start off by looking at multiplication. I want you to think about this, 3x plus 3x. We learned in our last lesson that we can add these two terms together, 3x plus 3x, because they're like terms, to form 6x. But I want you to think about what 3x plus 3x is. It's 2 times 3x. And that still equals 6x. We haven't changed anything. I'm just writing it out in a different way. I have two lots of 3x, so I'm writing it as 2 times 3x. We can break that down a little more because we know that in between the 3 and the x, there are actually a times as well. So now that we know we can break up a multiplication like that, what if I gave you this question? 5x times 4 equals. Well, we can break these down in the same way. 4 times 5 times x, which equals 20x. This is the basic principle we're going to be using as we go through these multiplication of algebraic expressions. I'm going to get you guys to pause the video here and have a go at these ones. When we come back, I'll show you the solutions. Okay, so these work exactly the same way as that example I just did up here. We've got 3 times 2b, so we're going to break that down. 3 times 2 times b is 6b. When we have two different letters, the process doesn't change. We break it up. I think it's a good idea to always put the numbers first. Remember, another thing we learned in our last lesson was that the order doesn't matter in multiplication, so we can change the order to anything we want. I think it's a good idea to put the numbers first. And then we just add the letters on the end, removing the multiplication sign. All right, when we're dividing algebraic terms, the thing we're looking for is a common factor. What that means is, in the case of this example, we want to think of a number that we can divide evenly into 4 and then divide evenly into 8. What I mean by divide evenly is we want to get a whole number answer. Now, it's important though that we try and use the biggest number we possibly can, because we could use 2 here. We could divide 4 by 2 and get 2. And we could divide 8 by 2 and get 4. But that still doesn't really get us to the most simple form of the expression, because there's a bigger number we can use to divide. We can divide both these numbers by 4 as well. If we divide 4 by 4, we just get 1. And remember, when we have 1x, we don't even write the 1, we just write x. And if we divide 8 by 4, we get 2. This is the most simple form of the expression. Now, when we get a problem like this, written with a division symbol, I always want you to change it to a fraction. Now, we need to think of a common factor for 10 and 15. What's the biggest number we can think of that we can divide by 10 and also divide by 15? I'm going to use 5. So if we divide 10 by 5, we get 2. If we divide 15 by 5, we get 3. Now, there's an a on the top, but there's no a on the bottom, so the a just stays where it is. Now, we've got something interesting here. We have a b on the top of the fraction and on the bottom of the fraction. What we can do with this, when we have a letter that's the same on the top and the bottom, we just cross them out. Now, the reason we can cross them out is this. I want you to think about just numbers now. If we divide a number by itself, what's the answer? It's 1. How many times can we fit 2 into 2? Well, it's 1 time. In the same way that 2 divided by 2 is 1, x divided by x is 1. And we use that principle down here to just cross out the b's. So all we're left with is 2a over 3. Yeah, this is something that I mentioned up there when we were doing our example. Always change the form of this to a fraction, because when we're answering a question like the one up there where we have, say if in this one we had also an x on the bottom, when you write it like this, it makes it really easy to see things that you can cancel out. You can cancel out the x's. You can divide that by 4 and get 1. You can divide that by 4 and get 2. And it just makes it really easy to visualize what needs to happen in the question when we write it as a fraction. So some key points that I want you guys to remember as we move in now to our practice in the textbook. When you're writing your fully simplified algebraic terms, when you're writing your answer essentially, we don't want to see any x, any times, and we don't want to see any divide symbols. If you need to write something times by something, we just leave out the times, we write it just next to each other, and you would never use a divide symbol, you would always write a fraction. I've mentioned this already, this lesson, order doesn't matter when we multiply. Deal with numbers and pronumerals separately. That applies for multiplication and division. If you have something like this in multiplication, you want to deal with your numbers first and then your letters. Equally true in division problems. You want to sort of split the problem into 2, deal with the numbers first, and then worry about the letters. Okay, so by the end of your independent practice that's about to come up, you should be much more comfortable with this, but now you should at least have an idea of how to break up multiplication problems and simplify them or solve them, and also using common factors to complete division problems. So you guys are going to go to chapter 3 again, and you've got some questions here to complete. Thanks, guys.